That the family thanks you all for attending this service to pay tribute to a great friend and a great fisherman. It's an honor to be asked to say the final goodbye to Skipper. Grief is our final expression of love. Therefore, if this delivery is interrupted with tears and sobs, it's only that expression of love for Skipper. For those that miss one of the best written obituaries by the children of this dearest lost friend, here goes. Laguna Madre Raymond Skipper H. Mock, 61 years old, passed away Friday, July 30th, at Valley Baptist Medical Center in Brownsville due to complications from the Vibrio bacteria. Skipper was born on February 15th in 1960 to Victor Hugo Mock and Mary Lee Goolsby in Brownsville, Texas. Skipper is the youngest of four. He grew up in Portisville and spent his entire life on the water around South Padre Island. Skipper learned the lifelong sports fishing from his grandfather, Jody Goolsby. In his youth, he was an avid surfer. Skipper graduated from Portisville High in 1978. He tried football and band during high school, but never enjoyed either enough to give up his evenings and weekends surfing and fishing. Shortly after graduating from high school, Skipper found Catch the Fish charter services in 1982. His passion for finding the perfect fishing spot became a full-time career, and Skipper loved every minute of it. He became a well-known fishing legend, an icon, and spent the next 40 years building his business, winning many tournaments, and making lifelong friendships along the way. Skipper married Karen Pfeiffer in 1981, and they had two children, Victoria and Corey. He brought them up on the water, teaching them the same tricks and lessons of being a great fisherman. As a result, they fished and won many awards in many tournaments on South Padre Island. The Skipper often bragged about their accomplishments. Victoria was the youngest ladies Kingfish tournament champion of her time and was the hostess of the 2007 Texas International Fishing Tournament TIFT. Corey won scholarship in 1999 at the CCA Star Tournament and has followed his dad's footsteps, not only his passion for the sport of fishing, but becoming a full-time captain. Karen, being outdoors on the water, I messed up, I always do that. Oh, look. Skipper met Karen West, what? Hey, does anybody hear me back there? Yeah. Karen Skipper met Karen Watt in 2005, and they were a perfect match. Both Skipper and Karen loved long outdoors and on the water, and they were both adventure seekers. Everywhere there was surf and sand, the couple visited. Many of these vacations involved competitions for Karen and some of her friends, but Skipper was the ever-faithful support team. They visited Hawaii a few times, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, Cancun, Cozumel, Costa Rica, Panama, poor guy. And that's just to name a few. But by far, the couple's craziest and most challenging venture was when Karen's 50th birthday wish was a challenge that couldn't be matched. and they decided to travel to Key West from South Padre Island via wave runners. Skipper, who rarely backed down from the challenge, quickly engineered some aluminum racks to carry supplies, and they loaded up their tackle and luggage on 2 Yamaha wave runners and set sail on an adventure of a lifetime. Local journalists chronicled the trip, and despite a few run-ins with sharks, alligators, game wardens, and weather elements, they made an 1,800-mile trek relatively safely without much need for a GPS. Captain Skipper Mock knew the Gulf Coast like no other. Skipper also loved his Harley Davidson and the freedom and excitement that can only come from riding in the open air. Skipper was a great cook and enjoyed the gathering with friends and family that would accompany a great Sunday afternoon or evening meal. Skipper was a friend to all who knew him, and he was loved by so many. His free, spirited, laid-back, and fun-loving personality will be cherished by all who knew him. His legacy will live on forever at South Padre Island, Texas. Rest in peace, Captain Speaker Mark. Shaka Shaka. Skipper is preceded in death by his parents, Victor Hugo Mock and Mary Dennis, and brother Joseph Smoky Mock, and Duke Skipper's German shorthand pointer. He survived by his companion best friend and his partner for life, Karen Watt, daughter Victoria Pollock and husband Jason of Des Moines, Iowa, son Corey Mock of Laguna Vista, brother Victor Sammy Mock and wife Julie of Portisville, sister Rhodey Rawls and her husband Don of Blum, Texas, numerous nieces and nephews, and his beloved parrot Vato Mock. We invite you to celebrate Skipper's life today at this wonderful place that was his base. And they put in here that the memorial service will begin at 4:30, presented by Captain Pomeranian. Oh, you don't need to know all that. Now, in lieu of flowers, please make contributions to either the Lower Laguna Madre Coastal Conservation Association or Friends of the Reef, and the coastal charity of your choice. Okay. This is not the obituary. This is just a little saying that comes from the heart. Skipper was all about his family. When talking to the kids, they never remember the old man yelling and screaming at them and punishing him and grounding them, as most parents at one time do. Instead, they remember playing with Dad all the time. To have to see them fish together was a tip on itself. Skipper was unique in his beliefs and confidence when it came to fishing. When asked about people cheating in tournaments, hey, Skipper, did that bother you? His answer, I don't care. I can still catch a bigger fish. Leaving late on most tournaments, that was his signature. He was criticized unmercifully. His answer to that abuse, it's not how you start. It's how you finish. And by God, he did that a lot of times. Corey and Skipper were constantly getting on each other's for whatever. But Corey remembers that playing tackle box while in tournaments, or as in his last Father's Day trip, he was the best tool he had to aggravate Pops. As he would mutter, so why are you changing lures? Are you tired of using the ones that works? But Corey's most memorable moment, he told me, was when, while fishing on the Star Tournament, and he wanted to fish for flounder, Skipper was set on fishing the potholes looking for a big trout, as he had scouted the water previously and seen some trophies in an area. Well, the Texas A&M Full Ride Scholarship flounder came from one of those potholes. Only Skipper was capable of doing that kind of stunt. Besides talented, he was lucky too. Victoria's memory that go back to early childhood fishing brought back the thought that even when he took her fishing just for play, she felt like they were fishing TIFF, LKT, and all those other tournaments in which they participated. As soon as they got on the boat, he started barking orders. Okay, let's catch some ribs. We're playing here to win, come on. Come on, let's go on and on and on. And the poor kids, they just had to do that. Talk about punishment. Last Father's Day, Victoria decided to try cooking some of the fresh fish that Pops had sent home with her to Iowa. Something she never had to do before. Cooking, that is. So she called him and he told her how to cook the best red fish on the half shell in the world. An hour and a half later, she served a great meal. She said, do you guys think he was being nice? It's just amazing that the most memorable moments that the kids remember and cherish were spent in the water. That was his life and playground. May you rest in peace, dear friend and brother, Skipper. Now, the family is going to appreciate you guys, your friends, and everybody to share your experiences about Skipper. So the mic will be passed, and Alan is going to help with that. We need somebody bigger than me. And for those that want to say nice things about Skipper, you can get on this right side, and those that want to say nasty and pick on him, you can stand behind me on this side. Thank you all. We love you, Skipper.
Good job, Paul.
First, I want to thank Karen for inviting me out here to do this for Skip, and I hope I'm not the last one. There should be some pretty awesome stories here today. You know, Skipper Bach, I didn't know him his first half of his life, but he became a really good friend when I started working at Paradise over there as a musician and captain. He was the one that always brought in the biggest stringers of reds. They were huge. It was always a good time at Old Paradise with him. There were times he was even a bouncer, believe it or not. And I have seen him break up some fights from the patrons who had just a little bit too much to drink. And but you know what? I never saw him start a fight. I never saw him argue with anybody. But don't get me wrong, this guy was strong as an ox. He was a very strong guy. He could handle himself, but never saw him in a personal fight ever. He was just a social drinker and loved to cook. He would cook up, you know, on occasions he would get a couple of big old tables together. You've heard of these Cajun boils. And we'd put them right by the water over there at the Old Paradise, and he would cook up some shrimp, and he would bring in some crawfish from Louisiana, and we would have a great time. Not just shrimp, he would bring all that stuff in there.
Oysters, Rockefeller.
Yes. Some of you guys remember those. There was so much food that he told everybody that was there at Paradise, even the staff, the people that were just sitting there, just written a wave runner. Come on, grab some food. You know, that was Skipper. But on the water, he was a fishing savage. He became this guy that you didn't know on land. I was fortunate enough to have fished with him many times. He would divulge lots of his knowledge to his clients, which were actually his friends. I've seen some of them here, and he treats them like friends, not just clients. As he would with me, he would give me all of his little tricks and stuff, which are pretty cool. There was a time that there was actually 2 or 3 times. He would take my ex-partner, Matt Tice, and the owner of Paradise, he's here someplace, Ron. And we always did the little trio thing. We did that several times. It was always fun. What he would do, this was the scenario, and most of you guys know this. I'm not a good guide, I've never been. But he would set up his boat. He would see these fish, which I never saw. He would be up on the center console with his foot, doing this with the steering wheel. And the fish, I never saw him. And he would line it up. He'd get his remote control on his trolling motor, and he would turn it sideways, and he'd say, okay, you get there, you get there, you get there, and you get there. Now, ready? And we would throw. We would all throw out. It was one of the most miraculous things I've ever seen in my life. We would have 4 big reds on from 28 to 36 inches long. It was an amazing thing. And bring them on. We'd throw back the little ones, tag a couple of the big ones, and we would stop, have a little brewski, and catch our breath, and he would get back up there and find them. They had moved away about 50 yards or so. And we did that 2 or 3 times, and it was a pretty awesome day. He knew what he was doing. Once we headed out and found ourselves, it was nice and clear at the old paradise, but we found ourselves in dense fog one day. And nobody knew what we were going to do. Of course, he said, yeah, I know where it is or whatever. But I found some old program I had on my phone. It got us to on the intracoastal waterway. We found one of the markers. Once you find one of the markers, he said, I know what to do now. So he knew how to do that with how his speed was and the direction he was going through his compass. And he knew exactly where we were going, and it cleared up, and it was a great day. A lot of people don't realize, but he wrote for people. He did fishing reports for up north in Houston, Port Aransas and stuff. That was pretty awesome. You know, he became a pretty good friend when he would get a new sponsored boat. There he is, he's over there somewhere. He would love to take us out. He always loved to take me out and show off his new boat, his new shallow sport, and it was pretty awesome. It was pretty cool in my book. That was just how Skip was. He was just an all-around great guy. It's so funny, one time when I went to his house there in Bayview, just a little south of the county airfield, we went up there. I didn't go over there a lot, but I remember being over there a few times, and the first time I walked up the stairs, I heard a lot of noise, like, Dad! Dad! And that's when I realized that, and it was probably you saying it, that he had he talked about it earlier, about his parrot, Vato. He was in, they even called him Vato Mak. So that was pretty close. You know, that was nice. He kind of threw us off when we went up there. It was, the cool thing about that, it was out in the country. I was talking to Corey earlier, I think he said it was about 20 acres or something. And it was far enough away from everything, but close enough where he could get into town in 20 minutes. So that was pretty cool. So what happened after that, he became a city guy. Hooked up with an awesome lady, Karen, and enjoyed the city slicker life. All the cool stuff. You know, I could sit here and talk about trips and a lot of other things. And what's so amazing that everybody here has stories about Skipper. I don't know his stories, I don't know yours, but everybody has stories, and I had mine. You know, he was a great guy. We all love Skip. Rest in peace, my friend. Don't forget to sign the guest book. Sign the guest book. All right, here comes Rick. Rick has some really good stories. Be careful, it's his family. There you go.
Thank you all. I'm Rick Guerrero. I've known Skipper since the early 70s, surfing at the jetties, and spent most of our free time and even our unfree time to surf if there was waves. Then we started fishing, and one of the things I do want to say what Alan had said, Skipper was kind and generous. He had thousands of charters, but he had mostly thousands of friends on his charters. And I witnessed so many times that Skipper would come to our complex by the boat ramp in Polaris at El Castillo, and he had customers that were old, people that owned Beard's Bread, that he would take fishing. And up until his latter days that would come down, Skipper would show up in the afternoons and bring them bags of fillets because they weren't able to fish anymore. So he didn't have customers, he had friends for a lifetime. And I'll take my hat off. One of the best guys I'll be around.
Here.
Amen. Rick. Thank you.
My name is Rob Euchre, previous owner of the Sportsman, recently retired 5 years ago. Over 20 years ago, Skipper and I met, and Skipper taught me one of the greatest gifts we could ever have, and that is figure out balance of life. So running a dealership, I always felt like I had to be focused at the dealership, because it's hard to sell a boat when you're fishing on the water. You need to be on the phone, on an email, or when they come to the showroom. So that was my philosophy, and I worked hard at that. So when Skipper and I went out the first time, he said, "Why don't you go fishing, Rob?" I said, "Well, I need to be at the dealership." He said, "No, you need to be out here more often. You need to breathe it, teach it, know it, and get some balance in your life. Get away from the place." So he did that, and we started a 20-year fishing relationship with Skipper. First time out, we do, like Alan said, we get into the reds, and just the two of us. And I hook into this big red, and I'm up on the front of the boat, and I'm thinking, I've got a big red, I'm so proud of myself, I'm fighting this red. And I couldn't hear Skipper in the back. Skipper what was he doing? I finally got enough confidence where I had the fish coming in. I looked behind me, Skipper had 3 rods with 3 redfish on it. He had 2 between his legs, and he was reeling in the 3rd one. So that's how I figured out he must be a damn good fisherman. He taught me so much. A lot. I know each and every one of you have some very, very special moments with him. Priceless moments that will be in your heart forever. And he gave that to all of us, and to many, many more. As Rick said, he was such a giver and a caring person. And if you could ever get him to really let down, he could tell you some great stories about himself and about life and about how to live life. So the day after Skipper passed away, we lived in College Station. We were at a local restaurant, and I turned around to look at the bar for whatever reason, and this person that had his back to me at the bar had Skipper's hair, his ponytail, his build, his flip-flops. It had to be a portion of Skipper right there at the bar with me. It was so eerie. Cinda was blown away with it as well. So he's around. I believe in that kind of stuff. And I hope he comes back into your lives, either through dreams, a bird, a fish, something that reminds you of Skipper Mock.
A flounder.
A flounder. We love you, Skipper. Awesome guy. Love you, Karen.
This is going to be a tough one, but I'm going to do my best. I'm Karen's 20, and back in the old paradise, I'd come down for a weekend, And we were sitting there, and this guy walks in, and Karen says, "Hey, Barbie, what do you think about him?" And I said, "You really want somebody with a ponytail?" And then we spent the next 6 hours pumping Michelle, the bartender, for information. And this whole thing about fishing, y'all, listen, I'm a crappie fisher. I can drop a minnow with the best of them. But when I came down here, Skipper said, "Let's go fishing." I said, "Where's our bait?" And he said, "It's in this bag." And I thought, that's not living. And let me tell you this, y'all. I was up on the front of the boat, and he's like, "Barbie, Barbie, Barbie, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock." And I'm like, 12, 1, 2. And he cast, and I saw that lure hit the water, and that redfish hit it. It was a 28-inch redfish. And I was like, he's like, "We gotta let it go." And I said, "But I have a special tag. It's mine." Y'all. I'm gonna miss my friend. My saltwater fishing, tequila drinking, cigar smoking friend. He and I sat outside many an hour, and I just want to say this, from my point of view, my 20 could have not chosen anyone better than that little ponytailed fisherman. Don't be scared, I did it.
It's good to be back in El Valle. So I called Karen the other day, and this time I didn't hear Skipper in the back going, "Best wedding ever!" which she would always do. But I told Karen, I'll tell you what that reference is. Karen, Skipper he didn't follow any social norms or rules. He really didn't. He was uniquely himself, uniquely great. And many of us are still struggling to find ourselves and be uniquely ourselves because we follow social rules and norms. But more special about Skipper is that he accepted you and received you uniquely yourself. And he loved you. Period. That love, we got married in San Diego, and Karen and Skipper made the trip to San Diego, California, and that's a gift enough. But I remember Skipper, at some time during the wedding, said, "You know, when next time you and Bo come down to the valley, we're taking you fishing." A charter from Skipper Mall. That's a pretty sweet wedding gift. And so, every time I would call, talk to Karen, "Best wedding ever!" You know, in that deep, grady voice, the kind that a lead singer from a heavy metal band has. That Skipper voice that's still in your head. Well, I want to tell Skipper that when he took us off in that charter, from our days spending with him, that was our best day ever with you, Skipper. Now, I know my dad and my brother out there, so Skipper, if they haven't done so yet, they're going to look for you and ask for a charter too. Give them the best day ever.
I wish I had this many friends. I guess the first time I ever saw Skipper playing softball in Laguna Vista, we had a little softball league going, and he'd come to our practices, and he was just this barefoot kid. He couldn't have been 14 years old. I was playing catcher, and I remember the first time I laid eyes on him, you know, he was larger than life. You wouldn't forget him after you saw him the first time, of course. And he got up to the plate. He was going to hit that ball over the fence, and he struck out. But after that, it wasn't much longer. You know how time passes. Next thing I knew, he was fishing. And he started coming into my shop, and he ended up on a shallow sport. And Rob Euchre would sell him a boat, and he'd come in and we'd customize it. He wanted everything, you know, laid out. So I worked with him on that, and he knew what he wanted, and we'd get him fixed up, and he'd go out there and kick butt with his boat. He taught hundreds of thousands of people to fish. I imagine there's just a multitude of people out there that are you know, thinking about him now. You know, how well he passed away, but gosh, the guy taught me to fish and caught me a lot of fish. And one time he came down to visit me in Panama. I brought the whole family, we brought, you know, and we just had a wonderful time with Skipper and everybody down there. And when I heard about what was going on with him, I was super sad. And like I said, I wish I had this many friends.
What I always loved about Skipper was I was somebody that's always been wild and rowdy and loud. And Skipper was really good with me on that because he was wild, rowdy, and loud. And so instead of having a moment of silence, I want a moment of loud. So I want to hear it for Skipper. I love you! Woo! Love you, Skipper!
Thank you, Ike. That was awesome. Skipper's a great guy. I met Skipper in 1980, and back when he and Karen were working at Fishing Pier, and Blind John owned it at the time. And I'd pick them up hitchhiking, give them a ride in my truck, take them to work, and they'd get in there and do their thing. But Skipper was one of the best fishermen I've ever known. And he would go to work with Karen when she'd work the night shift. And the next morning, he'd have 2 ice chests full of snook, because they'd be running through there. I don't know how many of you fishermen have caught at least 2 snook, but that's a blessing, and for a fisherman, it's one of the best eating fish on planet Earth, that whitefish. But he was a great guy. I enjoyed talking to Skipper all the time. I went flounder fishing with him a couple of times, and he was just always there for you. I talked to him, I guess, a day or 2 before this incident, and he was hurting. His feet were hurting real bad. He had gotten, I think, some quarter-some shots in his feet, and he was hurting, and he was always there to hook that bait and net that fish coming in. And he was telling me, John, I've reached the point that I got to sit down. He said, I won't move until they catch a fish, or I need to hook the fish. So, you know, he was doing the best he could, and as one of the best fishing guides here in Texas. I remember when we used to have the tournaments, and you'd pull into you'd pull into Sea Ranch. It was over there by Dirty Alice, and here, you know, got all these beautiful boats coming in. Here comes Skipper on a 2x12 fiberglass boat that was barely floating because the motor kept the butt end down. And here Skipper would come in on that little boat, and he'd win the tournament. He was one awesome fisherman and a beautiful man. The old Paradise where we hung out, the Galloways, they were always there fishing. I remember one of the boys bringing in the biggest stingray I ever saw in my life, and we had Alan Stewart was telling how good a cook Skipper was. Well, before any big restaurants that I knew back then, the shrimp Diablo that you see or hear, even eat here, Captain Roy, I know, claims that he started the recipe. Skipper had the best shrimp Diablo that anybody could make. And he always gave it away freely, along with Ronald. I know I've cooked a couple of hundred, at least 500 pounds of chicken during spring break, back when there was a spring break. But always the delight was seeing Skipper come in with the best catch. Well, love him for life. You hear, do you want to live forever? You can do that here on earth. You can live forever by memories. And he's one I'll carry to my grave. God bless.
sure how much I can do this, but I'm gonna give it a shot. Skipper is our Skipper baby, and my grands have named him that. The girls. So, I promise you, Skipper, I'll always set the hook. And in his words, that Vato says, "What the hell? What the hell?" But Skipper, you left us too soon. And we love you.
Hi, my name's Pete Greenholm. I'm from Fort Worth. I fished with Skipper for 30 years, and most recently, just the week before he got sick. And I was talking to my wife as I was coming down here about how much Skipper meant to me. My first date with my wife, who's from the New Orleans area and loves seafood, well, I invited her over and I grilled some redfish for her. Redfish I cooked with Skipper. She stuck around with me. A year later, we get engaged, and the morning after, we're on the boat with Skipper, and he was super excited about that, so we went and caught our limits of everything. And I never considered myself a client. I didn't consider him a guide. We were friends, always friends. And just a couple of weeks ago, he and I went out on a Tuesday and we were talking about life. We always talked about life. We talked about Victoria, we would talk about Corey, we talked about Karen. Just how's everything going? He wanted to know about my family. I would let my wife know, hey, we're coming in, we got a lot of flounder. That was my deal with him. I always wanted to get on the flounder, and he always pulled through. And most recently it was on a Tuesday, Tuesday a week before he got sick. He said, oh, Pete, it's just the fishing's been bad. We've got all this rainwater coming in, but let's see what we can do. You know, there's a place over by Holly Beach. Let's go see what we can do. So we went over there, and almost instantly, he reels in a nice flounder, screaming out, I've still got it. And I was like, yes, you obviously do. He reels in another one. He says, I own this bay. It's still mine. Then he reeled in the third one, and he goes, Pete, come on, you gotta help me out here, buddy. And sure enough, it was about the last cast of the day. I threw it out there, and he put me on one about 4 pounds and got it in, and that's the last flounder I ever caught with Skipper. And we were just fist bumping. It was wonderful. Well, I had him for 3 days later on Friday, exactly a week before he got sick, and I asked him, I said, hey, you know, Skipper, my son is now 6. He would love to go. Would that be okay with you? He really wants to go. And he goes, yeah, bring Pierce on. It'll be great. And so I may get choked up here in a minute. So we go into South Bay for some drum. And it was kind of a rough day, and Skipper got a puppy drum on the hook and called Pierce down. Pierce goes down. Pierce is reeling them in. And Skipper's holding the rod. And as a father, that's one of the neatest things I've ever seen in my life. And I was so excited that the next generation's fishing with Skipper. And that's why it's so shocking and tough that I'm not going to hear, let's go fishing again as we take off out there. But Skipper's just a wonderful person, a wonderful friend. I know all of y'all feel this way about him, and that's why y'all are here today. And I think with the suddenness of what happened, just let's all be sure to be good to each other like he was to everyone, and tell each other you love them. And because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So Skipper, shaka, shaka, shaka. I love you, buddy, and we're going to miss you. Thank you.
It's hard to follow all these great stories. I'm David Oliveira. I'm from McAllen. I drove down here today because Skipper Mock was a very special person. I met Skipper over 30 years ago also, but I fished with him for a couple of years, and I just loved the way he fished, steering his boat with his feet, standing on the center console. You could spot him a mile away. That's Skipper Mock over there. He's standing on his center console. And so one time I was in Austin. I was at a meeting with then Governor Ann Richards, and she used to come down here and fish a lot. She'd fish with my cousin, State Representative Renee Oliveira. And she asked me, why don't you come fishing with us? First of all, my cousin doesn't invite me. But second, you guys fish with bait. And my fishing guide, Skipper Mock, would kill me if he ever caught me fishing with bait. And I said, any idiot can catch a fish with bait. You can catch him with a lure. It's a talent. And she glared at me and she goes, I'm going to be down there in 2 weeks. You set it up. And so I called Skipper and said, we're going fishing. We're taking the governor fishing. And he was excited. And so we got out there at 6:30. We drove around the bay for a couple hours, maybe caught 1 or 2 trout. And those of you who fished with Skipper knew the sun had to be at 9 o'clock, 9:30 by the time that he could spot the fish. And what is it? 8:30, 8:39. And so we hadn't caught anything. The governor's like, she's whispering in my ear at 9 o'clock. She goes, if I was with your cousin, we would have limited out already. And I said, just hang on, just wait. And sure enough, right when the sun got in the right spot, Skipper saw a herd of fish and said, okay, in 50 yards we're stopping. Governor, you cast out at 10 o'clock. And she looked at me and she goes, what does that mean? I said, to your left. David, you cast out at 12 o'clock. I'll cast out at 2. We're going to do a triple hookup. And she goes, oh yeah, right. Well, she casted. She caught a big one. I caught a big one. Skipper caught a big one. She goes, oh my God, this is so exciting. And I remember she said, I need to go to the bathroom. And Skipper said, we ain't stopping. We're going after those redfish. And sure enough, 30 minutes later, we had our limit. And 2 hours later, we were eating those redfish. And the governor and I fished with Skipper probably a dozen times after that. And we always had a good time. My biggest regret is that I stopped fishing 10 years ago because I took up golf. That was a big mistake. And I know, it's a horrible decision. But my biggest regret is that I lost touch with Skipper. I would see him carrying out occasionally when I come out to Louis and stuff, but I lost touch with Skipper. But I was determined to get here today and share that story with you all. And God, he had so many friends, and he had so many more that are not here today, I know. But thank you all for coming out, and to Karen and Corey and Victoria, my heartfelt sympathy.
It's really hard for me because I've been a long life friend of Skipper. I've known him for a long time since we were before he started fishing. The first boat that Skipper ever got, I don't know if anybody knows, he called the bat boat. It was a white boat with the red wings on it. He started fishing on that boat, to start his fishing guide service. That was his first boat before he bought a shallow sport. Of course, back then, the shallow sport that he bought, as before they became the shallow sports that they are today, was a regular shallow sport with a flat bottom, and it had a tone in it, but it wasn't the shallow sports that we have today. But I've known him for a long time, since high school. I miss Skipper. I love the guy. I've known his family, when they were growing up, and we had a lot of Easter gatherings at the house over there. Had Easter egg hunts, and filming the cactus. The kids were chasing each other, breaking eggs on everybody's heads. But I'll go back to the fishing, Skipper. I floundered with him a lot. I used to have airboat. I'm not talking about the big old giant loud airboats. It was a John boat with a 12 horsepower Honda on it. And we used to putt, you know, with a 25 horsepower engine to all these different places during the floundering season. And we would go, him and his brother-in-law, Ronnie Pfeiffer. And then of course, we would also go with Oscar Gonzalez and other friends. We'd go floundering at night. And so we'd get out. Back in the day, you get flounder, it was 20 was the limit. And then after midnight, it was another 20. So needless to say, we loaded up on flounder. So one of these nights that we were out floundering, we were by the Coast Guard station with Ronnie. Well, Ronnie goes and he stabs the flounder, and then he goes down and he puts his hand down in the water. Of course, he had, you know, we all had gigs, you know. And Ronnie had a one barb gig. So he stabs it, and then he goes and to pick up the flounder. Of course, the flounder's spinning around, and there's a sand everywhere. He doesn't know how he's picking it up. So he puts his hand underneath it to pick it up, and he sticks his thumb inside the flounder's mouth. Oh, and needless to say, the guy is screaming, "Oh!" You know, the flounder stuck on his thumb, and so I yank it out. Of course, Skipper's laughing, you know, and Ronnie's crying, and I'm laughing too. So anyway, and then that's one of the memories. And of course, that same night, we're out there in the deeper water, and it was so clear that we could see the flounder, you know, almost 6 to 8 feet in the water. That's how clear it was over by the Coast Guard station. So I stabbed a flounder, and it was in deep water. So I said, "Oh, heck, I can't reach that flounder." And Skipper goes, "No, go ahead, I'll hold you." So, all right, I'll go. And so I go down to the water. I'm in my waist this far down, and he's holding my feet like this. Him and Ronnie are up there, you know, watching me. Well, I grabbed the flounder, and I got it. But I'm waiting there for him to pull me up. And so I'm running out of breath as I go, boom, 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 boom. And so, you know, I'm holding my breath, and still they won't pull me up. So they finally pull me up, and they're laughing their heads off, you know, because I'm drowning, and these guys haven't pulled me up, and they pulled me up, and I pulled up the flounder. So that was one of my memories with Skipper. But I miss the guy. You know, I've known him for a long time, and I'm surprised I'm not crying. I have so many memories with him because everybody's fished with him. You know, I've learned a lot from him. I learned my knots, you know, with him. He taught me a lot of things that we saw, a lot of fish, and there's nobody else like Skipper Mock. Anybody that's ever known him knows that he's had a big heart. The last time I went fishing with him was last fall. We went out to South Bay. We went by the mango, over by the mango groves over there, and we got our limit of snook. We got some flounder. We got some redfish, and we got some trout. And we came back, and I mean, it was awesome fishing with Skipper because I hadn't fished with him in a long time because I'd been gone for a while. And I came back, and it was awesome, you know, because, you know, it was Skipper Mock. And anybody that knows the Skipper Mock, you know, that knows that the guy had talent. And I just want to reach out to his family and say that I miss him and I love him, you know. That's all to say.
Hi, my name is Amanda, this is Michelle, and we've been elected to speak on behalf of the Gator Chasers, Karen's triathlon team. I can't say much about Skipper as a fisherman or all of these other wonderful things that everyone has been talking about, but I can talk about a man who has welcomed sometimes 30 plus wild and crazy people into his home. Sometimes at 6 in the morning, we're knocking on the door. Just the last time I was there, I said, "Hey Karen, I gotta go use your bathroom," and she said, "You might want to give Skipper a shout out and make sure it's all okay." And there he was making waffles and putting blueberries in every single little crevice of the waffle. What we do as a triathlon team takes a lot, and he's been there, of course, to support Karen, but to welcome a huge group of people into their home, into their pool, out into the open water, and to cook for us, and to party with us, and to make Skipperitas for us, and give us too many of those, way too many times. He has welcomed my wild little boys, and taught them to do this, and they now do this in every single picture that they take, and they'll probably do that for the rest of their lives. And so we just want to say thank you, and that we will all remember Skipper always, and every time we knock on that door, we're going to miss him, and we're going to be doing this every time we're over there.
I'm one of the newest members of the team. I just came on board last year, and I didn't get to know Skipper that well. But what I do know of him is that when I would go to Karen's and Skipper's house for swim lessons, he was always there cheering me on and always saying good morning to me and everything. One of the last memories I have of Skipper that I'm going to cherish is on my birthday. My husband and I last year, before COVID took effect, won some raffle tickets for some bay fishing, and both my husband and I have only been freshwater fishing our entire lives, and this was our first experience of open water fishing. I was all excited. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna catch dinner for my birthday and everything. Unfortunately, I came back with nothing, and I ran into Skipper, Karen, and Karen's mom at Pelican Station. And Karen asked me, said, "Did you catch anything?" And I said, "No." I said, "I didn't catch anything for my birthday." And Skipper said, "Come out with me, I'll get you something." And that is going to be the fondest memory I'm going to have of him. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Armando. I remember first time I ever met Skipper, I was at the AMI Kids board meeting, and I had just met Karen, and she said, yeah, I need you to meet somebody. His name is Skipper Monk. And of course, I was kind of new to the area. And I said, "Who is this guy?" He said, "Oh, it is the Skipper Monk. The Skipper Monk. He's one of the best fishing guides ever." And so we ended up meeting, and he became one of my best friends that I've ever had. And I'm a dentist in Port Isabel, and we made an arrangement, tea for fish. Tea for fish. And coming to Paradise, and I'm sure many of the people that are here know this experience. I'd ask them, "Skip, what time would I be there?" "Oh, I'll be there around 8:45. And I was always late, and I'd show up and, "What the hell, man? What the hell? Let's go!" All right, so we get in the boat and go past the fingers over there, and the boat would rev, and there you are going on the water. You look behind you and you can see him, almost the silhouette of Skipper, almost a god on the water. His ponytail flapping, dark sunglasses, and you thought to yourself, "I'm with a legend. This could be a magical day." Anytime you had gone with him, you felt that something magical would happen, because you're with one of the greatest. So we go from place to place, and when that boat stopped and turned, your heart would stop. There they are! There they are! Hurry up! What the hell? What the hell? What are you doing? Come on! And you were always in the wrong place whenever there's a pot of redfish off the right. And God forbid if everybody else was catching fish except you. And he would let you know about it. Yeah. But there's so many memories of him, and they're just too countless to describe. But the day before he had gone to the hospital, he had come to the office, and he had had some swelling issues. And I asked him, I said, Skipper, how you doing? He said, oh, I'm doing great. He had just seen Dr. Schwartz, and I'm feeling great. But the swelling came back. I said, well, he said, I gotta go see Greg Luna. Gotta go see him. I said, well, Skipper, go get that taken care of, and you gotta get better, because you're almost there, buddy. You've been through so much, you're almost there, and you're gonna get better. And he said, yeah, he was just so happy that he was turning a corner with his health. And I turned to him, I said, Skipper, I appreciate all the things that you've done for me and my family, and I love you. And he turned to me and he goes, Mondo, I love you too. And he walked off, and I never saw him again. And that was the day before he had gone to the hospital. So he was a gentleman. His heart was full, and those don't come around very often. So.
Skipper.
I'm back. I don't see anybody jumping at the opportunity to get the mic, so I have very little time left because I came here drinking water all day, and I had a lot of liquid courage shots, and then beer to chase him down with, the way Skipper taught me how to do it. So now, I noticed that everybody came from the right side and said nothing but nice things about Skipper. And nobody in the left came out and said anything bad about Skipper. So, true to my word, I'm the first one. So, fasten your seatbelt because here we go. Skipper hated my guts. But he loved me with the same passion. Now, you figure that one out, okay? It's just like having a wife that's Superman at you, and then she gives you the best loving of your life after you're a real sweetener. Well, not quite that exact, but similar. One thing that comes to mind that probably, I met him in 1980. He had just been out of high school. He had a 17-foot Baitmaster that he had rigged to have a nice chest with cleats that he installed himself, therefore they were not parallel, they were kind of crooked. And then, that's where I stood, drifting with my buddy Rick, who was one of the biggest friends he ever had, 6'9", biggest, get it? And then he was on the console, so the console is 4 or 5 feet, so he was way, and Skipper surfing barefoot on top of the cowling of the motor. It was a 70 horsepower Evinrude or Johnson. And he is looking at the things and he goes, Bob, 1 o'clock, 30 yards. Jig it, jig it, jig it, jig it, jig it. Set the hook, boom, like the twin was talking earlier, the similar hit. I got a 32-inch red, my first fish of the Laguna Madre with Skipper Mark, side casting, and then I bring the fish in, there's no tags, just pictures. So we took pictures somewhere, but that was the very first redfish I ever caught in my life, and side casting of all, okay? That was the good story. Then comes all the other stories, okay? And I was given permission to tell this story by Corey because I wouldn't tell her otherwise. So Rick, my buddy Rick, Skipper and Corey, we did this several times a year. We are going fishing. And Corey was at that age that he was just a pain in the butt. He was like 12, 13 years old, and he was always yap. You know, being with him and skipping the boat was just like watching a sideshow. So, you know, we're talking and doing things, and he's on his case, and they're all, I can get real loud for those that are speaking over me, but that's okay. This is a good story, guys. So, so in all this going on, and Skipper and Corey are bickering about each other, and he says to Rick, and I says, well, my dad finally got smart. He goes, what are you talking about? Well, he finally decided to date a girl named Karen. So he won't fuck up anymore. And that is a true story. He went through at least 5 tries, but they just couldn't do it. And that is the truth. Oh, that's just one of the little ones, okay? Oh, I got another one. Probably not as good, but pretty good too, okay? So, Eddie Curry and Skipper Mock entered the Redfish Rodeo circuit. And while they're doing all the applications and all the stuff, Skipper says to me, yeah, they won several cups, thousands of dollars, lots of adventures, and all of that. But when he was filling the application to do this deal, they asked him for an alternate. Okay, it was an alternate. Well, at the time, Ronnie, his brother-in-law, was around, but no. He called and says, hey, Paul, do you mind if I put you as an alternate? And I go, oh my God, Skip, I'll be honored. Blah, blah, blah. He goes, look, you don't have to worry about catching fish. All I want is somebody to be in charge of filling the boat, taking the trailer, I'll catch the fucking fish. Thank you, Skipper, I'm still on it. He just needed somebody to take care of his ass, okay? Well, you thought that was good? Wait till I tell you the next one. Oh shit, I'm 71, I forgot. No, there were more stories that cannot be told, even with Corey's permission. So I'm gonna leave you guys thinking about those two. The guy was amazing.